Hello and welcome to Northwest Wildlife Investigators. This program is brought to you by Northwest Trek Wildlife Park as part of our online Wildlife Academy. So thank you so much for joining me today. This program will be about 30 minutes in length, and it is recommended for youth ages about 5 to 10, but of course everyone is welcome to watch and participate. If you do want to fully participate, I encourage you to get yourself a piece of paper and either a pen, a pencil, a marker, colored pencils, just something to draw with, because there will be a writing or a drawing component to this program. So as I said, I'm coming to you from Northwest Trek Wildlife Park, and my name is Jessica Moore. So for those of you who don't know, I'd like to show you quickly a little bit about Northwest Trek. So Northwest Trek is located in Eatonville, Washington. So we're a little over about an hour and a half south of Seattle, right down here in Eatonville. And we are actually a zoo. So if you're wondering, what is Northwest Trek? We are a zoo, but we are a little bit different than more traditional zoos than you may have experienced. And that's because we are a wildlife park. That means that when you come to our park, you see scenery like this. You might be walking out through the forest and come to an opening on a viewing deck and look out and see animals, just like you would in the wild. So we do have animals here in our care, but we try and keep everything as natural and all native as possible. And the animals that you will see here in our care are only native to the Pacific Northwest. And so you might be wondering, well, what kind of animals do you have at Northwest Trek? So we have over 35 different species or family groups of animals that live here, and over 200 individual animals. And we have things like large predators like grizzly bears and black bears. We have wolves, cougars, lynx, and bobcat. We have smaller animals like coyotes and wolverines, badgers, otters, skunks, beavers, and porcupines. We also have a variety of birds, including eagles, owls, and swans. And then all of our hoof stock, or our herbivores that live out in our free roaming area habitat. And those are animals like bison, bighorn sheep, and mountain goats, moose, Roosevelt elk, deer, and caribou. So these are all the animals that live here at Northwest Trek, or in our care. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit different than just the animals that are here in our care. We're going to talk today about being wildlife investigators. Now, hopefully all of you like investigating, because that's what we're going to do today. And hopefully you love to go out and explore nature. Now, if I could, I would have taken you all outside and done a nature walk with all of you in person. So we're going to do the next best thing today, and that is a virtual exploration of nature. So I went out on a walk and I looked in the habitat around me and found some clues, and I'm hoping that you will all be great investigators to help me discover what animal was living here. But before we can start looking at our clues, we need to get our tools. Now, hopefully you all have your Northwest Wildlife Investigator Toolkit with you. Did everybody bring that? You might be thinking, I didn't bring anything with me to watch this, and that's okay. You actually have your tools with you already. So to be a good investigator, you need a couple things. You need your eyes to be able to see and bring information into your brain. You need your ears to be able to hear and process the sounds around you that are telling you what's going on in the world around you. And the last thing that you need is right up here. And I don't mean your hair. Nope, you don't need hair on your head to be a good wildlife investigator. You need this brain that is inside your head. And your brain is going to help you process all the information. It's going to help you make sense of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, maybe what you're smelling or touching, and help you put all those things together to figure out the clues of the wild. Now, sometimes as a wildlife investigator, we may want to bring other things with us, and that's just fine too. I love to have a good toolkit when I go out investigating. Some things that I like to bring. First of all, I like to bring just some paper and pencil. I love to take notes about what I see in the wild, because we can't always bring things back with us or pick them up. So just taking some great notes about what you see, what you hear, what you experience, those are all great. And if you're crafty, you might want to make yourself a nature journal. So I made just a simple one. All this is just a folder, and I printed out my cover. This is my nature journal. And then on the inside, I have a space for nature notes, and on the other side for nature drawings. And I've just got some paper right inside my journal there. So I can always have that with me because it's a great idea to be able to take all those notes. Now, when we're out in nature, we love to touch things and we love to explore with all of our senses. And that's great, but we should keep in mind that we always want to be careful with nature. We never want to harm anything in our exploration. So if we are going to explore things, we need to be gentle and be very careful. Now, usually I would say we should never touch any wildlife. We always need to leave them alone. But I know as kids and as observers and explorers, sometimes we might pick up a frog, pick up a snake or a bug or a spider. And that's okay, as long as we're being very gentle and very respectful to that animal. And the way I like to explore these animals is to bring just a little Tupperware bowl. This is gonna allow me to put the animal safely inside the container, make some observations, maybe write some things down, and then gently release that animal back out into its habitat. So we just always have to be very respectful of the animal. And we may want to collect some things and bring them home with us. Not living things, of course. We always leave living things out in the wild. But it's always a good idea just to bring a bag with you. Bring something to put your leaves or your rocks or your sticks or your feathers or flowers or whatever you found, to put them in that bag and go ahead and bring them home with you. Now, there's one last tool that I like to bring because sometimes we can't physically touch things and we want to record our observations. So it's a great idea to bring a camera with you. Now, you might have a cell phone or a digital camera or maybe a really nice fancy regular film SLR camera. That's all great ways to just capture what's going on around you. I personally love the old school digital or a Polaroid camera, far from digital. So the Polaroid camera is going to allow me to take a picture, and the picture is going to come right out the front right here, and I'm going to have that to tuck right in my nature journal. So if you have an old Polaroid, maybe one of the new Instamax cameras that print your pictures right then, that's great to bring along too. So we have all our tools. We're ready to go out on our nature observation. So as I said, I went out and did this observation and this nature exploration on my own because I couldn't bring all of you with me. But what I did do is bring back some clues. So hopefully you're all ready to help me be a good wildlife investigator. So as I said, I went out on a walk in a habitat just like what you see here. It's a beautiful forest, and it was along the edge of an open meadow. And as I was walking, I saw something on the ground. Now, I want you to think about what this item is that I'm about to show you, and really think about what it is, not necessarily what you think it has come from. So I'm going to show you an item, and you get your thinking skills on and see if you can tell what it is. So this is the first thing that I found. Got a nice good look at this. It's quite large. You can see it's, compared to my head, it's a pretty big object. Has lots of beautiful colors on it. It's very soft, a little fluffiness right down here. So I want you to think for a minute. What is this thing? Don't think about what it came from, but what is this thing that we're looking at? Now, I bet you're all thinking, it's a feather. And you're right, it is a feather. Based on the information in my brain, I know that I've seen something like this before, and this is a feather. So let's think about, why would an animal need a feather? There's a few different reasons why an animal might need a feather. One might be how it gets around. So we may have seen feathers on wings of animals, and those wings help them to fly. So feathers can be used for locomotion or ways to get around. Now, if we look closely, down at the bottom here, see all this fluffy stuff? I think another thing that an animal might have a feather for is to keep warm, with all of this nice, soft, fluffy feathers that would be really close to the animal's body. And then the last thing I'm thinking about with this feather, or why an animal would have it, has to do with the color. Now, if you look carefully at the color and watch it kind of disappear into the woods, why do you think the animal would have feathers with this color on it? If you're thinking to camouflage, then you're thinking on the right track. So our animal might use feathers to fly, it might use feathers to keep warm, and it might use feathers to hide or camouflage or protect itself. So now I want you to get out your paper and pencil. because as a good detective, we're going to kind of piece all this together. As an investigator, we've got to make sense of what's going on. So what I'd like to do is start drawing the animal that we think we're looking for. Now, I am not a great artist, and it's okay if you're not either. We're just going to have fun with this. I'm going to draw my animal as if I was looking straight forward at it. And I know, in my head, I know that feathers oftentimes go on wings. And so that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to draw a couple of wings and feathers. And you can put in as many or as few feathers as you want. I've got 5 feathers, but just so that it's a representation for me to know, hey, remember this animal had feathers. But also there's a couple other things to remember. Remember, it had soft feathers right next to where the body would be to maybe help keep it warm. And let's not forget the beautiful coloring, that pattern that was on that feather, maybe some speckles put in there, because we want to remember that our animal might be using camouflage. So here's our start to putting together the animal that I was following out in the woods. So now the next clue that I found, I continued to walk around in the woodland habitat, and as I was walking, I came across a big tree. And at the bottom of that tree, I found something. In fact, I found a lot of something all over the ground. There are a whole bunch of these things all over the ground, and they're kind of tiny. So I am going to do my best to show you kind of up close here what these are. So again, I found these all over the ground. And if you notice, they are thin, kind of long, and they are very, very pointy at the top. And if you were to be able to feel these, you would notice that they feel kind of plasticky, almost like little straws. But they are brown on the top and white on the bottom. So again, don't think necessarily about what animal this might have come from, but think, what is this thing? Now, I'm looking at these things, and I think that they're quills. And I'm thinking that an animal would use quills for only one reason. Why do you think an animal would use quills? I'm guessing it's for protection, so defense. These are very sharp. If I were to stick my finger hard down on that, this probably would stick right in my finger because they are very sharp and very pointy. So whatever animal we were following has quills that I bet they use for defense. So let's get our drawing back out. And I'm going to draw just kind of a body on my animal. Just kind of make a little round body here at the bottom. And from what I know about feathers, I have never seen quills on feathers before. So I'm going to draw the quills on my body of my animal. And I don't really know kind of what the body shape is. I'm just making a guess here about what that body shape would look like. And your body shape can be whatever you want it to be. This is just what I'm putting on mine. And I'm going to put those quills on there. But what's interesting is when we think about an animal that has some form of self-defense, they may not necessarily use camouflage, but we have camouflage on these feathers, and we have quills here as well. So this is interesting that our animal may fly, it may camouflage, and it may also protect itself with quills. Now, as I continued to walk along in the forest, I came across a little creek, little river. And there was a lot of soft sand and material around on the shore. Now, I can't bring you the next item I saw, but I did have my camera with me and I took a picture. So let's take a look at this picture that I got. Now, what do you think this thing is? Now, there were a whole bunch of them all over the ground. And for size, to tell you, it was kind of about the size of the side of my hand here. Not the fat side, but the smaller side. So it wasn't very big. There were a whole bunch of them all over the ground. And there was no other sign of another animal, another person around. Just a whole bunch of these things on the ground. Now, hopefully by now you've guessed what this thing is. And if you guessed that it's a track or an animal print, you're correct, as that is the print of an animal foot down in the soft sand. Now, there's a few interesting things to look at with this. First of all, notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4 toes on this animal, and then kind of a center, what we would call the foot pad right here. But there's something else. If you look closely, What's sticking out on the end of those toes? Any guesses? Right here, I can see claw marks. So this is telling me that our animal has been walking around on probably more than 1 foot, at least 2 feet, maybe 4 feet. It has 4 toes and claws. So let's draw that on our animal. I'm gonna go ahead and draw in 2 legs. Now again, our animal might have 4 legs, I'm not sure, but I just wanna make a little note here so I remember in my brain that it has feet with 4 toes. I think toes are really hard to draw. Okay, 4 toes, and then let's make sure we put in those claws. And the claws are long enough to stick out and make marks in the sand. And also, not only are they long enough to stick out and make marks in the sand, but looking at this track here, it's telling me that this animal does not have retractable claws. There are some animals out in the world that can pull their claws into their paws, and other animals can't. So that's going to help me narrow it down just a little bit, that this is an animal that can't retract its claws. Now I have one more clue for you to look at. This was also there on that little creek bank, and this one was really interesting. What I found was a tree stump. And on the ground underneath that tree stump were little tiny pieces of wood, like little wood shavings that were almost cut in little rectangular pieces. And I actually could see the tree that had fallen down on the ground just right next to this stump. And when I looked at it, it doesn't look like something that a human cut down with an axe or a saw. It doesn't look like how a tree would fall down if the wind were to blow and blow it over. But if you look really closely, you can get really close up to your screen and look, you'll see little rectangular shapes on the wood here that almost look like little chisel marks. And I'm thinking to myself, what could this be? It doesn't look like claw marks. It doesn't look like an animal came and just pushed it over and broke the tree off. But what it looks like is kind of like when I bite into an apple and there are 2 scrape marks in my apple. So I'm thinking that maybe an animal's teeth did this, and the teeth are going to have to be kind of like ours. You can see we have 2 kind of bigger rectangular shapes right in the front, but I know I couldn't chew on a tree. So I'm thinking they've got to be even bigger than our teeth. So let's go ahead and draw in some teeth on our animal. Now I'm going to draw a head on my animal right there. Okay, we've got a head. And I want to make sure that I remember that it had big, what I'm going to call bucked teeth. Big buck teeth, just like that. Now, those buck teeth are going to be great for chewing down a tree. And this is the last of the clues that I had. So let's just take a minute to fill in the rest of our animal. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and put in some eyes. And maybe you want to draw a little nose on your animal. Okay, I'm going to draw some ears. Maybe just some little round ears like that. A little in the middle of the ears. Just so that I can kind of fill in and get a little bit better picture. That was the last of our clue. So we should have solved our mystery at this point. Now, take a look at your animal. Does it look like anything that you've seen before? You know, when I look at my animal, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. So I think maybe we discovered a whole brand new animal living here at Northwest Trek that has wings and quills and 4 toes on its feet with claws, and it's got some buck teeth. And this is amazing because we made a brand new discovery. Do you think I'm right? Maybe not? You know, when I really think about it and put this all together in my head and try and get it to make sense, I think maybe we made a mistake. I don't think there's an animal in the woods here at Northwest Trek that has feathers and quills and toes with claws and buck teeth. I think we maybe made a little bit of a mistake in how we put all these together. So what do you think? Do you think that there was an animal that we were following that had 4 different clues that it left us? Or do you think we found clues from 4 different animals here around the park? If you guessed that you thought we had clues from 4 different animals, I think you're right. I think that's what's happened here, that we have been following 4 different animals around this habitat. So let's go back and think about that a minute. So we found a feather. A feather, as we learned, can help animals with flying, can help animals with staying warm with these very soft little downy feathers here, and can help animals blend in or camouflage. And if we look carefully at this feather, I can also tell you that it is an owl feather, and I can see that along this edge, the feather is kind of jagged. It's not straight up here at the top. And that's going to tell me that this is an owl feather. So if you want to take a guess, what owl is this from? If you guessed barn owl, then you're correct. This is a feather from a barn owl, and barn owls are found in barns, just like their name says. These animals are excellent hunters at night. They could camouflage if they needed, but since they're hiding most of the day and only out flying at night, the camouflage isn't that critical for them. But they are going to use these nice soft downy feathers to keep themselves warm, and absolutely use these feathers for flight, to fly around, to find their food. And one of the most amazing things about these owls, and the reason that they're my favorite owl, is that barn owls have some of the best sense of hearing of all the owls out there. They do hunt at night, sometimes in almost complete darkness, and they can find their food just based on the sound that they can hear from the animal. So for our next clue, we have another animal that we found, and that other animal was, or that other item was the quill. And so looking at these quills are very sharp and pointy. And if you guessed that the quill is from the porcupine, then you are correct. Now these quills are used primarily for defense. And the animal, the porcupine, is going to have these on its body, all over its body actually, to help protect it from predators. Now these are a modified hair, which means that they will actually just kind of fall out of the body of the animal, just like our hair would. And that's why we can see them all around the ground, nearby where the animal is. Now our next clue that we found was the track. And as I mentioned, it's only about this big, about the size of my hand. And these tracks were found kind of in the wetland forest area. And if you're familiar with your pet or your dog, you may know that this track looks like a dog track. And that's because it's from a coyote. Coyotes are found here in the Pacific Northwest and actually all over the country. They're very adaptable. They're very good at finding their way around into all sorts of habitats, making meals out of pretty much everything that they find, and they're very versatile. We do have a lot of them here in the Pacific Northwest, so there's probably a good chance that you have seen a coyote out in the wild. And then the last clue that we had was this one right here. Remember, this was that set of teeth that were chewing on the wood. And there's only one animal I know that does something like this. Do you know what that animal is? If you guessed the beaver, you're right. So our beavers that live here in the Pacific Northwest are engineers of wetlands. They're going to use those sharp front teeth to cut down trees, eat bark off the trees. They don't eat the whole tree, but they're going to eat the bark off of the trees. And then they're going to use those trees to make beaver dams, which are going to block up water and create wetlands. And then they're also going to use those trees to make their beaver lodge, which is where they live. So we had a lot of great clues, saw a lot of really fun and interesting animal pictures and animal clues. But right now, I would love to share with you one of our Northwest Trek animals. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and you're going to hear from one of our keepers, Wendy, and she's going to tell you a little bit about one of the animals that lives here and calls their home Northwest Trek. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and you'll get a chance to see one of our animals.
Well, hi guys, my name is Wendy. I'm one of the zookeepers here at Northwest Trek, and I am standing inside the porcupine exhibit. And I cannot wait to introduce you to our porcupine, whose name is Thistle. So we're gonna pan over to him so you can get a good close look at him. I'm standing about a foot away from him, and I'm hand feeding his breakfast, which is kind of a variety today. He's got some leaf eater chow, which is what I just gave him. And he also has some rodent chow and some fruits and vegetables. And so that's what he eats here at the park, in addition to the bark of a tree. And so his body has some really cool adaptations that allow him to be an amazing tree climber and an amazing bark eater. I think the first coolest thing about him are his teeth. So I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit and see if we can take a look. While he's snacking on that rodent chow there, it may not be terribly visible, but the next piece I'm going to give him, we're going to take a look at those teeth, and we're going to see how wonderfully sharp and colorful they are. So as I was giving that little snack, you should have seen kind of some bright orange. And a lot of folks, when they first see that, they worry that he's not brushing his teeth very well. But actually, that orange part is incredibly important for an animal that eats very hard food. That hard bark of a tree is difficult to chew. And so that orange part is actually kind of like armor. It keeps his teeth protected and helps keep them from being worn down too quickly by chewing on the bark. Although those teeth are incredibly cool in that they also are ever growing. So those teeth keep on growing and keep on getting sharper every time he chews. And so they're essential for chewing on that bark. So in addition to those teeth, he has some really neat little claws on the front feet you can see there as well. Those front claws are like little grappling hooks, and they're really helpful for him to be able to climb a tree. And so just then, he heard something. He heard a little bit of banging in nearby. There's some construction going on here at the park. And he was a little bit cautious about that. And that's actually really cool that he still has all those wild instincts on being careful around strange sounds. And so I bet you he'll come back. So we're going to just hang out a little bit and we'll talk a little bit more about his cool body parts. So as he's kind of cruising around there, we talked a little bit about those grappling hook feet. Those are excellent for climbing a tree. And his favorite thing to do would be to climb to the very top of a tree and chew on the really pitchy, sticky bark there at the top of the tree. And so he's got excellent ability to climb. And also, in addition to his teeth and his hook-like feet, he has some very small eyes. If you look at him, he doesn't look like he has very good vision, and he doesn't really need fancy vision in order to find a tree. He would be just fine finding it, probably using his sense of smell above all. And so he does have kind of a big nose there and has a great sense of smell. And so he doesn't need fancy eyesight. He does probably need a pretty good sense of smell. But let's keep touring his body. And so as he kind of walked away there, he wasn't really all that fast. But being a porcupine, he doesn't really need a great amount of speed to be able to catch a tree. The trees hold still pretty well. And so doesn't need to have super long legs, doesn't need to have a ton of speed. Here he comes back. He's like, okay, I'm good. And so looking at those legs, they're kind of short, good for climbing, and not really for much more as he walks back and forth. But the one thing that I haven't talked about that is probably the first thing that you think about when you think about a porcupine are the quills. And as he was walking past, you got a good view of those quills on the lower part of his body. So he does have quills covering every portion of his body except his nose and his belly. And what you're seeing, kind of the long, kind of white-tipped hairs. Oh, just check out the back there. He's really showing you off those quills. Those white-tipped hairs are just guard hair. They're kind of his way of looking scary and kind of letting other animals know that he's trouble. They're not actually quite very sharp at all. And as we go in, you can kind of see past those white-tipped hairs, there's kind of some dark gray fur. That part is the part that keeps him warm. He would be active even in snowy areas of northern Canada and the US. And underneath all that, those kind of stiffer, thicker white ones, especially there at the back, he showed those so nicely. So those are the quills, and they're very much the texture of kind of a cross between a toothpick and a straw. and they are covered with thousands of little barbs. And so they're a great way for him to stay safe. And you may have heard about porcupines shooting their quills. They definitely do not. You need to touch a porcupine in order to get stuck. And so it's a very easily avoided problem. Just make sure you don't touch any wild animals, particularly porcupines. And so we're going to wrap up with our visit with Thistle. I hope you enjoyed visiting with him, and I'm sure he enjoyed visiting with you. And so next time you hear about a porcupine shooting its quills, hopefully you can share with folks that that's not the case. And most of the time, the porcupines are up in a tree chewing on the bark. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, so hopefully you enjoyed learning a little bit about Thistle and thinking about some of those things that we were going over earlier today. Things like, how does Thistle move around? So he walks around and he climbs, as Wendy said, with those kind of grappling hook-like claws. So he's designed to walk kind of slowly, but be a great climber. Now he's got that fur on his body to help him survive in colder temperatures and stay warm. And then also, he doesn't need to worry about camouflage and really blending into his habitat around him, because he is covered in all of those amazing quills that are going to protect him from predators in the wild. So he has a lot of great things that are going to help him survive. And for us as wildlife investigators, we can now go out into the world around us, look around, make observations about things that we see all around us, and use our tools, our brains, to help us make sense of what's going on with the animals and the habitats. And as good stewards of the land, as good stewards of our watershed, it's our job to make sure that the habitats are protected so that there's places for all of these animals to live. They have all these wonderful characteristics that allow them to live in these habitats, to move around, to protect themselves, to find and eat food. But without our habitats, these animals can't survive. So we can all do our part to protect the habitats, to keep our watershed and our forests and our grasslands clean, to remove garbage or pollution or other things that might be kind of hurting some of these habitats around us. And you're also doing a really important thing in protecting habitats for wildlife by learning all about the world around you. So keep up the good job, keep up the good work, being good learners, good wildlife investigators, and good stewards of our land. So I hope you had a lot of fun with me today. If you want to learn a little bit more about Northwest Trek, about the animals around us, or maybe have a little bit of fun, I encourage you to go to our Nature at Home page. So you can go to the nwtrek.org Nature at Home or the nwtrek.org Learning page. And we have all sorts of fun scavenger hunts, bingo games, arts and crafts. And we also have a lot of opportunities to do more programs like this with our online Wildlife Academy. So I hope you had a great time with me today. I know I always enjoy talking about our watershed, our wildlife, and ways that we can be great wildlife investigators and great stewards of the land. So thank you so much for joining me, and have a great rest of your day.